So it's no secret that in the later part of the Nintendo Switch generation, we have seen Nintendo lean heavily into re-releasing ports and remasters of classic games from other systems over the lifetime of their various consoles that have been their flagship devices over the years. And obviously the Switch has built out an incredible library of games that is very deep, with incredible software sales to boot. Like, Nintendo's not failing right now, they're doing very well. But amongst the list of ports and remasters that we have right now, there are some sore, standout, missing ones that, in my opinion, I hope we see Nintendo deliver on throughout the rest of the Switch's generation, in addition to maybe putting some of these out as launch window or first year Nintendo Switch 2 releases. Because while at the most recent Nintendo Direct we finally did get the more original Nintendo content revealed, there is still a good chunk of their 2024 and even one game into 2025 that we know are straight up easy projects that Nintendo likes to lean into. And I want to ask the question in today's video: where are these missing ports and remasters as we talk about ending the Nintendo Switch generation and beginning the Switch 2's generation, or whatever it ends up being called? And while some of these games we don't have any outstanding leaks and rumors for, others we do, with some good evidence like job postings and descriptions leading into the credence to the idea that some of these games may be coming to Switch or Switch 2 in the near future. So we'll get on the same page with all of that. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off with an incredible timeless classic of a 3D platformer that was sadly left to die on the Wii, left out of the 3D Mario All-Stars pack. We of course are talking about Mario Galaxy 2, and Nintendo just acted like this 3D Mario classic didn't exist in the 3D All-Stars pack. Apparently they thought it would be too much value to pump in all 4 of the big iconic 3D Mario games into one cartridge, so they opted to leave it out. And the problem is that we haven't seen them acknowledge its existence since. Now there's also a problem with the 3D All-Stars collection inherently itself, because you can't actually buy this on a digital storefront anymore. It was a limited time run, and Nintendo of course produced plenty of physical copies, so they're still somewhat easy to pick up. I'm just surprised that years later we haven't seen them offer some alternative on how to buy these games, including Sunshine and Galaxy 1. Like, obviously Mario 64 is playable through NSO, and maybe Sunshine and Galaxy 1 aren't that far behind, but Galaxy 2 is a simple project that Nintendo could port over potentially as a standalone, or even just merge it in with something like Mario 3D Land from the 3DS and sell it as a double pack, and I'm sure it would make a lot of Mario fans happy. I know I would. 242 stars to collect in this masterpiece of a game, some of the best platforming, and of course Yoshi was introduced into the Galaxy world. Like, tons of fun, some of the best level design, and really just a big shame at the end of the day that this was left out of the 3D All-Stars collection. And while there are no rumors or indication that Nintendo's working on porting this anytime soon, I do think it's a no-brainer and even just an easy cash grab for them at the end of the day. So will we see it towards the end of the Switch's life cycle or Switch 2's beginning of the life cycle? It's entirely possible, but I'm also not necessarily expecting it. Keeping in the universe of Mario, we of course got Luigi's Mansion 2 HD ported from the 3DS recently, and Luigi's Mansion 3 has performed really well on Switch. So where is the original? Of course it's stuck on the GameCube currently, or I should say GameCube and 3DS, because it did get ported to the 3DS later on. But this is a no-brainer one, another one that Nintendo can go give that simple HD up-res treatment to, and have a classic that a lot of fans are going to want to play on their Nintendo Switch console, or even into the Nintendo Switch 2's lifecycle. And the nice thing about the Switch 2, if it is backwards compatible like we are expecting it to be, well then at that point you're going to have a pretty nice library of games already to play on it day one. And if you have backwards compatibility intact, we then, even if Luigi's Mansion, the original, comes out on Switch 2 later on in the future, we still have access to play 1, 2, and 3 with the same hardware, and that's what I am after here. I definitely think that this should happen, and it's kind of curious that Nintendo released 2 Dark Moon, of course, rebranded as Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, before Luigi's Mansion 1, and they did it at, of course, a standalone $60 price, which leads me to believe Luigi's Mansion 1 would also be that standard $60 price, but I think many would argue it might be more worth it than Dark Moon was with its HD re-release at a full $60 price point. And it's a GameCube classic that was right at the launch window of the console, has a ton of nostalgia for a ton of players, and I just hope that we see it brought to the Switch or Switch 2 sooner rather than later. A game that relied heavily on its motion input, but would be a no-brainer to bring to Switch, especially with Joy-Con support, and then you have the alternative to just map some of these controls to a traditional Pro controller. We are talking about Punch-Out from the Wii. storied Nintendo franchise that absolutely deserves to see the light of day again, and what easier way to do that than just to release a simple port or remaster of Punch-Out on the Wii and bring over that exact version, clean up the visuals, give it some quality of life improvements and some different control scheme options, and you're set to go. That's legitimately all you have to do, and if it sells well, we might see Punch-Out return with a fresh, brand new game in the future. One game that does actually have some rumor mill speculation talk around it is none other than Kid Icarus Uprising, and this is largely because Sakurai seems to be hinting at this thing over on his YouTube channel, which he is now not posting videos on because he's back to in the weeds game development, but he's definitely insinuated that he hopes somebody at Nintendo will port it, kind of looking directly at the camera, maybe teasing that he's somewhere involved in that project. Of course, this is one of his babies, and we've even seen some job postings from Bandai Namco suggesting that 3D action remakes are in development for a Nintendo Switch game, and Kid Icarus Uprising fits this bill nicely. Now, they're gonna have to rework some controls and definitely update the visuals from the 3DS version, but it's really not impossible to do. You could give us again the option to aim with traditional controls or utilize the Joy-Con to aim at the screen, very similar to how you would do it on the 3DS touchscreen. So not a hard project to pull off. Kid Icarus definitely deserves more love than the series is currently receiving, and this is one that would be a no-brainer day one pickup for me. These next two games not only have existing claims from very credible names within the industry, names that have correctly leaked the first installment of this game getting a remastered edition, claiming that these are also coming, but I also think that out of all the games we're discussing on the wish list kind of today for this video, these are probably the most likely to see the light of day, and potentially very soon, like as soon as the next Nintendo Direct presentation, whenever that is. We of course are talking about Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered, and I am saying 2 and 3 together because I honestly think Nintendo will bring these over as a bundle pack. The outstanding rumor was that Prime 1 Remastered was getting a standalone kind of deep dive treatment, really enhancing all the visuals, gameplay mechanics, and the entire experience, and 2 and 3 were getting something of a more simple up-res HD remaster, and I believe that these are going to be somewhat similar to how we saw Nintendo put out Pikmin 1 and 2 together as a combo pack, and they shadow dropped it, and the visuals from those games largely looked like an HD version of the GameCube originals. I think Nintendo wants to put out Prime 2 and 3 for the hardcore fans, but also knows that they did not sell near as well as Prime 1, and they will likely give us both together at a $50 or $60 price point, and it's just a no-brainer. When you're releasing Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and it has of course 4 in the title still, we want to play 1, 2, and 3 to tell us the story, leading us all the way up to whatever is happening in the world of Beyond, which there are all types of theories with, and we won't deep dive that here clearly, but I do think with big number franchises, Nintendo historically is pretty good about letting us play the previous ones before the newest is ultimately released. And again, these in my opinion are the most likely out of all the games we were discussing to be a reality sooner rather than later. And it wouldn't be a Sunbro video if we didn't talk about The Legend of Zelda, so that is what's closing out our list today. There are a handful of different games that are just straight up missing. Of course, the Wii U remasters already of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess that we've talked about at length for far too long, and I would argue that we're also missing the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3DS remakes, but I actually think Nintendo's probably not going to revisit those and port over a remade game from the 3DS era of those classic titles, but rather wait a little bit and actually from the ground up remake them entirely for Switch 2, really taking the visual fidelity of those games to the next level. I think we'll get Ocarina of Time as a standalone $60 release one day, and then later on we will see Majora's Mask a couple years after the release of Ocarina of Time. I do think Nintendo will ultimately redo both of those, and it'll be a very welcome addition when they do. And the bigger question mark now is whether or not Wind Waker and Twilight Princess will be simple stopgap games that we see them released together or apart for kind of padding out the end of the Switch's life cycle and into the Switch 2's, or if it's just some of those games that at once upon a time were planned to go ahead and for whatever reason Nintendo decided to hold back on porting them. Maybe they are just going to come over as GameCube Nintendo Switch Online games as their originals for the foreseeable future, or maybe Nintendo does still have them in their back pocket and is ready to drop them at any time. Regardless, any of these Zelda ports would put Switch 1 and or Switch 2 over the top for me, because those 4 games right there, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess, are some of my favorite 3D game experiences, period. Favorite experience in gaming, period. Like, they're literally in the top echelon of Nintendo titles, in my opinion, and I think everyone deserves to be able to play them easily in the modern day with some modern visuals. So let me know in the comments down below which ports and remasters that you think are no-brainer decisions for Nintendo that they should bring over, and what do you want to see. I should honorably mention F-Zero GX. Maybe we see F-Zero return with that port or remaster first and then a brand new game, but which ones were left off the list that you want to see? Which ones do you agree with me on? And do you think that there's any chance that as we end out the Switch's life cycle and start Switch 2's, that we see any of these projects that we don't know about right now come to fruition? Or do you think that as we talk about this new hardware era, that we will see less focus on ports and remasters and more just brand new original Nintendo content? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.